Welcome back to the Dudecast.
How's it going? I haven't seen you for a few weeks, so
I know it's been a little while, but it's been good. We've had Christmas, we've had New Year's. I've been good. You been good?
Yeah, I've been good. It's an interesting go for me. Like we were discussing off camera, I'm still very much as I've been in for rehab for my hip for a long time, and things are slowly moving forward, and we're taking steps, and just kind of rolling with the punches with that. But I did have. I did get injections. I did go for day surgery just prior to Christmas. So it was interesting because initially, for anybody that's been involved in our healthcare system for a long time, and such as myself, sometimes it takes you a long time to get from point A to point B.
For sure.
This injection thing has been on the table for quite a while, and I didn't think I was going till February.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a screw up, which didn't make me feel very good because it was like, okay, now it's going to be like March or April. And because of the screw up, I actually got in prior to Christmas. So I've been on a no do anything hiatus for at least, a few weeks now, just to let what they did injection wise, kind of.
And was that like a corticosteroid or was it like a nerve
I opted for no steroids.
Right.
I'm going with the lowest common denominator. I got sort of a synovial fluid. It's called Monovisc injected in there to encapsulate the joint, and hopefully provide a little bit of a buffer that is not quite proper currently, right? So
it's more of like a cartilage wearing down kind of thing, and
yeah. I mean, it's anytime you do things, as a guy throughout your life doing sports and athletics, and especially in my case, fighting in extreme sports. Yep. I skateboarded, I kickboxed, I rode mountain bikes off cliffs. And you crash, you crash, and I mean that's ultimately what ended me up in the hospital. Anyways, I crashed going across a crossface, fell 75 feet, broke a tree in half. Didn't fall the full 150, got airlifted off. Should have been dead. So I mean, I don't take what I'm saying is me complaining about anything.
No,
because
for sure.
I'm very just happy to be here and still able to walk on my own power, not in a wheelchair, because I did have a rock pierce my back in that incident as well.
Wow, yeah.
Which initially when I woke up, because I was knocked unconscious, which crazy enough, I could feel the pain in my back, and of course, the guys are like, whatever you do, don't move. And I mean, I've been through enough of these things that I know, and I've had friends that have had spinal damage and are in wheelchairs from games kind of incidents. So it's I didn't move. I thought at that point it's like, this is really gonna suck. It hurt. The rocket pierced my back. It was basically sitting there. It was about maybe an inch away from my spine.
Wow.
So it was one of those just terribly unlucky things where I was terribly lucky to come out of it the way that I did.
Yeah,
so I
sure.
mean, again, these aren't complaints. These are just sort of the ups and downs of it. And like I said, I got airlifted off. There's a little bit of a bill involved in that. I think it was $40,000 at the end of the day. And
that you had to pay, or I guess went to insurance or something.
Ultimately, I've always been well insured. So I've always carried insurance. I know a lot of guys that do that. And, one of the things I would say to people is that if you are involved in such activities where you take risks, and granted, these are all calculated risks. Like, I'm not saying go take a bike and jump off a mountain because it's awesome and anybody can do it. Not anybody can do it, and it's very calculated. And I mean, there are risks involved. I mean, you do some crazy stuff, but in all honesty, we used to spend a lot of times just, figuring the stuff out, building jumps and figuring it out, knowing that, if we build this here, we need to land about here, do some math and figure all those kind of things out. So, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, I was heavily insured, so it was covered, but it would have cost, if it wasn't, that was the bill that came from BC because I had my accident in BC. So it was $40,000 that I owed the BC government. That didn't include all the stuff to get me back to Calgary and all that kind of stuff as well. And even one of my friends, when we were filming one of the films, Tedman, we had an accident in Utah where he We were jumping across. We built a jump that went across a canyon. If you've ever seen the Red Bull Rampage where they ride down the mountain, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yep.
So we were there for Red Bull Rampage. We were building a line. We wanted to build a jump across because they have fingers that go down.
Okay.
And we wanted to jump from one finger to the other finger.
Right.
And unfortunately, there was a miscalculation speed-wise when he was going in, and he hit the knuckle of the drop. His bike fell the full thing. He flipped over the bars and landed on top, so he didn't fall down, which was awesome. Yep. But it was enough of an impact to rupture his small bowel. He ended up going to hospital in the States, which anybody knows is a very expensive. But we had insurance again, covering all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I mean, those bills are big, and I mean Ted's was. His bill was huge in comparison to mine. I mean, it was. I think he blew through $40,000 in the first, 24 hours. Yeah. Kind of thing. It was
for sure.
Just absolutely unreal.
The U.S. medical bills can rack up so
he had
fast,
surgery.
Like into the hundreds of thousands.
He had to go into emergency surgery. And the crazy part of that story as well. I guess I'm going to talk about this for.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
for a good chunk is that when. Basically, after the accident, we were out in the middle of nowhere. We're in Virgin, Utah. So anybody that's part of Rampage or been there knows where it is. And I mean, we were there before. We were there with Lance Canfield, who has Canfield Bikes, and we're there with Josh Bender. Anybody that is into mountain biking knows that he's kind of the godfather of the big drop. Josh was a crazy man. He did things like the jaw drop and Kamloops, and he was in movies like New World Disorder, and sort of launched into that crazy kind of free ride mountain bike thing. So we were there doing our thing, but there's nothing there. There's nothing. You're in the middle of nowhere. Like we set up camp, we bring food, we bring water. You're there for a while. You're building lines, you're digging, you're doing all this crazy stuff. There's nothing around. The closest place to it is Hurricane, and it's about, I would say, about an hour away from where we were. Yeah. So we, Ted crashed, and I mean, crashing is not an abnormal thing. Right. I mean, obviously, we were there prior to Red Bull coming in when they bring their own medical staff and all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, there's some big crazy things for anybody who's watched it on whatever platform has seen. So, like I said, we were building stuff, getting ready. That was sort of the plan, and then basically the accident happened. Ted seemed to be okay. Like, he didn't fall the full thing down. That was kind of the big thing that scared us initially. Like, it's a big drop. Like, it's a big way to free fall. Yeah, no kidding. That didn't happen. He just kind of went over the bars. He was a little sore. He wanted to take it easy. And then when he started throwing up, I'm like, we need to go to the hospital, man. Like, that's not good. Yeah. I figured he was going into a bit of shock. He didn't really want to go. I insisted. We jumped in my truck, and we drove, and we went to basically Hurricane, and it got worse as we progressively went, right? Because obviously his body was going into shock. Yeah, I mean, he had some internal, his small bowel is dumping its contents into his body, and he's starting to go into shock, right? So we went to the first place in Hurricane, we went to the hospital, and we went to emergency. We went in there, and we said, this is what's happened, all that kind of stuff. I had to grab a wheelchair because by the time we got there, he couldn't walk. Right. He was keeled over in pain. And then the crazy part was, we get in there and we're talking about it, and they were taking him in, and the lady at the administration desk, I assume it's the administration desk, she was looking at the stuff. She's like, you sound different. Where are you from? And I'm like, well, we're from Canada. We're here. We're doing this and all that kind of stuff. And then she shuffled off. So 5-10 minutes later, come back. So does Tedman in a wheelchair, and essentially they're like, we can't take you here. And it's like, what? Crazy. We can't take you here. Yep. And it's like, we have insurance, we can pay for this. It's like, he needs your help. And it's like, we can't deal with this here. And that was it. Yeah. That was the end of the story for them. And it's like, well, where do we go? And it's like, well, you can go to St. George, which is a ways away. It's like, well, can you help us? And it's like, no. Wow. Just flat out no. And it's like, holy shit. Yeah. So we drove to St. George, which is like 2 hours away. At that point, it was evident that what had happened was serious, and that he was having some serious problems. So it was kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to speed. So I was driving I was driving a Chevy Avalanche, about 180 kilometers an hour, just tearing up the road, just blasting down the road. My philosophy was like, I mean, obviously it's excessive, the speed that I was going at. It's like, if I get pulled over or the cops see me, maybe we'll get some help.
Maybe you get some help. Yeah, right? Exactly.
Because we're no idea what's going on, no idea the system, anything like that. So we blast, we get all the way to St. George. Nobody stopped me, anything like that, which is crazy. Yep. Like, it was just like a straight shot. Pulled into the hospital parking lot, took him in. They took one look at him in emergency. They're like, get him into surgery now.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it, right? Yep. And it was just, and the rest of the story is just basically, kind of some of the craziness afterwards. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, it's funny how these things just kind of blow up, and but the shocking part to me was the unwillingness of that hospital and Hurricane to help.
Wow,
that's brutal. Like, it's like, call us an ambulance. Can you call us an ambulance? No.
For a transfer, anything.
It was no. The answer was just no. And it's like, are you crazy? Like you could see this guy. It's like, we can't handle this here. I'm not asking you to handle it. I'm just asking for help. Like, please help us. No.
Wow, that's brutal.
And it's just, and it's funny because after he got out of surgery, I mean, obviously, they repaired the damage and dealt with that. Put him up, and the doctor said, like, if he hadn't got here as quick as he did, he would be dead.
Yeah,
because he would have gone into complete, cystic shock, and
then that would have been it. Yeah, exactly.
And it was just like, Jesus, Yeah. And it's like, again, that one point, like an hour or 2 hours away in that little hospital, they were just like, no.
That's nuts.
And
that's crazy too, because that's like minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes, maybe hour.
Yeah.
That it would have been had it been any longer, and that probably would have been it, right?
Yeah.
Like, just, it's nuts if you think about that. It brings up a good point though, and I've said this to friends of mine before in small independent touring bands. Talked to my my brother, my cousins, anybody that I've ever talked to that's ever done any amount of touring, and it doesn't matter whether it's a 1 day or a 2 day, like out of town. We're in Calgary, so from Calgary to Red Deer and back.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's an overnight.
Yeah.
That's a little tour. Get insurance.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because obviously, you knock on wood and you hope that there's nothing as extreme as somebody falling or somebody injuring themselves with a knife or a car accident, whatever. But any little thing that happens can completely derail your tour and derail your life.
Yeah.
And if he, worst case scenario, they probably would have treated him in the bigger city.
Yeah.
But then what's the fallout? Right.
Well,
they don't let them go. And
the fallout is that they'll let you go.
Right. But they're going to hound you for the rest of their life.
There's an agreement, and a lot of people don't realize this. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I just wouldn't pay the bill. And it's like, what are they going to do? Well, the truth is there's an agreement between the U.S. and Canada that they can basically come after you for the money here.
Of course.
And you're not getting off the hook.
No.
That's the thing. And I mean, to be honest, travel insurance is so cheap.
So cheap. Yeah.
Here it's like, and it's funny, like when we were in Hurricane, sort of back to Tedman, and they were looking at the insurance and they were asking, how much that cost, and they were flabbergasted how cheap it was for the amount of coverage that we had.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's what it is. But, in our system, a lot of people don't utilize that. And when you go for a trip, generally, nothing's going to happen. I mean, obviously, we were paying higher premiums because of what you were doing was
a higher risk, for sure.
And what we were doing, we're putting ourselves in actual danger. So there is a cost to that. But even still, like they were just like, we pay more than that a month for our regular day-to-day kind of premiums.
Yeah, their regular coverage. Yeah, no, it's nuts when I look at the costs of insuring your equipment, insuring your vehicles, insuring yourselves, and health, and like just all of the, there are specialty firms that deal with musicians, that deal with high risk sports, that deal with, you name it, you can pretty much get insurance for it. And it's phenomenally cheap especially if you put it against the cost of not doing anything and having a catastrophic event.
Right.
And it blows my mind how many people risk it. Like I've got a buddy that's down in Vancouver and they travel up here, quite a lot. And I think maybe 2 years ago he came up, and again, it was the same kind of thing. Well, they don't have any insurance, this, that, and whatever else. And they had their trailer broken into and all their gear stolen and this, that, whatever. And that was it. That was the end of their tour and pretty much the end of their band.
Right.
And I'm like, well, call your insurance, get everything. He's like, oh, we don't have insurance. And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. You would think at the very least that you have home insurance coverage, that you have some sort of coverage through your home or renter's insurance, to protect, what property you do have.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people don't even have that.
Well, that's it. A lot of people don't. And depending on the type of insurance you have and depending on the value of your goods, they may or may not actually be allowed to claim, because a lot of homeowners insurance, of course, like things like guitars and amps or whatever else, but you have to read the fine print because it's not always coverable, or it's only coverable up to $800 or something. And anything beyond that, technically it's a collector instrument, and it's not covered under the policy. So like for all the I mean, obviously we're kind of veering off topic as it were, but all of my guitars I actually have to insure completely separately from my homeowner's policy, because they're all high enough value that they're considered antique or collectible or high end. I can't remember the term that they use, but basically they're like, we're not paying for that under your home insurance. You have to have a separate policy. And I'm like, that's fine, because if something happens to one of my guitars, one of my really valuable guitars, it's like I'm not replacing it tomorrow. So
and that'll be a process in itself for you just to get that replaced. I mean, it's not like you're going to go to the corner store and like, hey, can I get another one? It's like, well, no.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even make that anymore, or, it's a custom build or
whatever it happens to be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Craziness. So that was that was a long and roundabout kind of catch up via the new year. But I mean, wow. I don't know. I'm still flabbergasted. That's amazing. I mean, I'm sure you guys still talk and you're still in touch, but I mean, like,
I haven't talked to Ted in a long time. I know that he went on and I mean, I was out of mountain bike and he was still in, and I know he had another accident after that as well, which was quite severe as well. And, I've reached out to a couple of times, but, hopefully he's doing all right. Like if you happen to come across this Ted, do give us a shout.
Give him a call, man.
Yeah, but it's kind of crazy. It's mountain bike community is kind of small, and people will talk and all that kind of stuff.
So you all kind of know each other.
Kind of know each other or know of each other, and
well, it's funny because going back to an earlier episode, I don't know how we're doing on time, but when we were talking about social media and how I left the bulk of social media being Facebook, really, because let's face it, that's the biggest social media site that there is, right? But it was amazing over the Christmas and New Year's holidays how many people, friends and family, actually reached out to me. And of course, I was calling people too to say Happy Christmas and all the rest of it. But I was very amazed, like people that I hadn't talked to, that I figured were kind of peripheral friends, those ones that you just connect with on Facebook, but it's not really, you don't really talk. I had a couple of them call me and I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome. And we ended up having, a good 15, 20 minute catch up over the phone, which I thought was really, really cool. And again, it's that, really the community, whatever it happens to be, whether it's music or mountain biking or whatever your sport is, it's actually not as big as you think it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a small world. And somewhere, somehow, somebody crosses paths with somebody that knows you. And, it's always kind of been like that, right? Yeah. I mean, they might know you in a different part of your life. Like, I mean, myself especially, I find that, like, people know me from different segments. They know me for different reasons.
Right.
And a lot of time because of, just the way people are, and they compartmentalize things in the sense that they take a look at something and just say, that fits in that box over there.
Right.
They'll just say, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's a tattoo artist.
Right.
Where a lot of people will go like, what? He tattoos?
Yeah.
No, he doesn't tattoo. He does this.
Right.
And it's like, well, this is what he does, or he does this, or they might know me from mountain biking, or they might know me from photography or from film, or, and the list sort of goes on and on. So it's kind of interesting how, that kind of works,
how people just, as you said, compartmentalize. And if you meet somebody with, in one specific world,
they assume that's all
you do. Like that's your one thing. It's interesting too, like holiday parties, you go to and you meet new people. Like we went to my wife's office Christmas party, and the first thing that people usually ask, right, is like, oh, well, what do you do, and what's your career or whatever else. And I always kind of go, so like I don't want to talk about that. Like that's not really who I am. I mean, obviously it's who I am. It's part of me, but there's so much more. Like I love all these other things. Like let's talk about whatever it happens to be, not just, the job.
I think it's funny too that people feel a need to do that to people as well, as sort of just, figure you out and label you and put you in that nice, easy, compactable ball, because I don't feel that anybody in this world is that one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And I think anybody, when you take a look at yourself and say, what do I do in a day? Like, what am I all about? It's not an easy thing to kind of say, I'm this.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Unless that's, unless they're very goal orientated and that's what they happen to be striving for in that moment.
Right.
So a lot of people will say, I am this, because their goal is, here.
Yep.
They're on that path to that, and that's what they're focused on. So, a lot of times we'll do that to ourselves as well. Like, I'm this,
for sure.
I'm that.
Well, and it's human nature to try and compartmentalize and make things easy to sort of categorize and figure out where people fit with your worldview.
Yeah.
But it's kind of boring. I always, again, those parties too, I'm usually my opening line, hey, I'm Nick, nice to meet you, or whatever. And then before people get the chance to go, oh, what do you do? I'm like, so tell me a story. What have you been up to lately?
Yeah.
And people are like, that's a weird question. Like, what do you mean? I don't know. What have you been into these days, or whatever? Like, just something different other than the usual. Oh, the weather's been really nice lately.
Yeah. Where do you work? Where do you work? Interesting.
Well, because you run the risk too of like, well, what do you do for work? And somebody says, oh, well, I'm an astrophysicist.
Yeah.
I have no questions. Like, I have no, like, we don't exist on the same plane at all. And I'm like, so astrophysicist.
I'd have lots of questions. I would just be like, you need to talk to me right now. Like, I am the dumbest person on the planet, because I can guarantee you I don't get it.
Right. Well, no, but you know what I mean, right? Like, I can't really ask intelligent questions and get involved in a conversation other than just tell me how smart you are.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I've seen stars,
Yeah. Well, and that's it too. I think it's funny because usually our favorite topic, and our meaning like humans, our favorite topic is ourselves.
Right.
But if you put somebody on the spot to talk about themselves, they won't do it.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah. I think that's well. Some people maybe.
Some people, but I think you have to prod it a little bit.
Yeah.
Once you get them going, then it's good to go. But it's very hard with that.
I think once people know that you're interested.
Right.
Once you're genuinely interested, then the conversations will go to those things.
Right.
Then they'll talk. Like, but beyond that, I think, sometimes it's kind of like, no. It's just, the small talk they're not so much into, right?
I was I can't remember what I was doing, but I was talking to like an old timer the other day, and he's not even that old. I think he's in his mid 60s or something, and we were just chatting, and he happened to mention about small talk.
Yeah.
And he had this great line where if somebody says, hey, how you doing? He usually responds with, do you really want to know, or are you just asking to ask?
Yeah.
Because chances are most people are like, well, just ask and ask.
Yeah.
Cool, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
Done. And away you go with your day. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're actually interested, then I'm gonna, you know what I mean?
Then I'm gonna unload on you.
Then I'll
and I guarantee you, at 65, he's got a plethora of things.
Exactly.
From probably medications to doctors to complaints about the government. To, he's probably in his basement right now writing angry letters to the government under a naked light bulb.
Yeah, right.
Just wants to tell her,
dear motherfuckers. No. This is what I have to say about the new Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement.
Yeah.
Pretty
Paragraph
funny stuff.
5, subsection 2, because I've read it.
Yeah, right. And I just thought it was interesting though, because it's it speaks to that subtleties and niceties of everyday life, where you're just kind of saying things to say them to just carry through your day.
Yeah.
But if you're actually asking to ask, and I think that's where a lot of that human connection is missing sometimes. Yeah. And it's
I think you need to ask people to ask.
Yeah, well, and that's it. You do need somebody to ask, and occasionally people do want to know.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. Like, sometimes I don't want to unload and tell you all the shit that's going on in my life, but other times I might need to talk to somebody, and why not? If it's a stranger or an acquaintance or something that you feel a little bit enough trust in to talk to, that can make the difference between, having a really stressed out, horrible day and having a much better day after the fact.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting anyway.
It is true, and I mean, even if you don't know them that well, that's sometimes the foundation of good friendships. I mean, you don't meet somebody and say, hey, nice to meet you. My name's JD. Well, we're now the best friends. That doesn't work like that, right?
No,
it's something that builds over time, and I mean, obviously,
sure.
having those conversations helps build those, and
Yep.
You can have all sorts of friendships that last a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's
and some that are short.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think anybody can agree that people will travel in and out of your life, and there'll be people that are acquaintances or even really good friends that time, distance, interests,
life.
all those kind of things. Life just you drift apart, and that's just kind of the natural part about it.
What's your? I'm assuming you've had a few, but like of the friends that like will drift out and then away, what's your cutoff?
Me?
Before you, like when you try that second or third or fourth time to like get a hold of them or engage them or like, go out for coffee or something and they kind of turn you down or miss or whatever, like when do you,
I am probably what most people classify as a lone wolf.
Okay.
So it doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Sure.
I've probably been that person more than I've been on the other end of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, for me, it's just, if you want to do stuff, I'm cool with that. If you don't want to do stuff, that's cool as well. I've had people that have called me like, 10, 15 years later. It's like, hey, I'm dropping into town. And it's like, we talked yesterday.
Right.
And I'm always open like that.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as we're friends, we're friends.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with that. Like it's, I don't have any cutoff. I don't, sort of disown people like that.
Yeah.
I do disown people, but generally that's for betrayal or,
right. Well, I was going to say if it's like a poisonous relationship or something,
yeah,
I think that would be,
if it's unhealthy or,
but
like I said, if they do something what I would say fundamentally don't believe in.
Right.
It's kind of it. And at that point, those people know it. I mean,
sure.
If you people are watching, you know exactly who you are. You know what you did.
You are.
You know what you did, and you know how we got to this point, and you know that there's no going back because, probably one of my faults, I would say, is the fact that like I do not, it's like if it's done for me, it's done. Like if it's that egregious of a kind of thing, it's like, okay, we're done.
Right.
And I don't want to invest any more time because to me it's a waste of time almost.
Right.
Which a lot of people probably disagree with me on that kind of thing. It's it's like, but if it is that bad, it's for me is the damage has been done so badly. It's like at that point, it's just forget about it.
Yeah,
right?
No, for sure. Poisonous people and negative relationships, I don't think are worth keeping in your life.
Yeah.
And there's a point at which going back again to the 65-year-old dude. Yeah. It's like once you get enough life under your belt, you realize that life is kind of too short to put up with that shit, whatever it happens to be. Yeah. And sometimes those people
and that's definitely it. I mean, it's definitely something that I've adopted more and more as I've got older and older. When I was definitely young, I was probably in some terribly toxic kind of friendships and relationships that you just do it because you don't know any better and you just your world's a lot smaller when you're a kid.
Of course, yeah. But I 100% agree though too, like with relationships and things and people that you haven't seen. Like I can think of a couple buddies again. If you happen to wander across this, Andrew, give me a call, man. It's like those relationships. And I bet you if we were able to get together for coffee or a beer or something, it would be like absolutely no time has passed.
Yeah.
And that's totally awesome. And I think those are some of the best friendships because you can kind of pick up 10 years, 50, like that movie Grown Ups, right?
Yeah.
Adam Sandler in the crew. It's not a great movie, but it's kind of fun. I remember watching it. I think it's been out like 10 years, something like that. So like when it came out, I was like, 29, 30.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is kind of dumb. I watched it again. It was on TV like last week. And I was like, this is actually a really good movie.
Yeah. But just time and perspective changes.
Time and perspective, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
For sure. That sounds like a pretty good place to wrap up the podcast for today.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been Nick.
I'm JD.
This has been the Dudecast. We'll catch you on the next one.